Helly was furious. She wanted to tear, throw, and smash the dishes, especially the one his parents had given him for his and Nathan's wedding. An exquisite set produced by a famous porcelain factory was not at all unfortunate. And preferably saucers and cups with recognizable cobalt mesh on the head of an unfaithful husband and his mistress. Well, let the fine china die. Let the fickle and vile street person suffer. That's what they should do. Even if Helly has to answer for it. Even towards herself, betrayed by the man she loved, there was no pity. The soul was filled with resentment, anger, and a desire to get even with her husband, who, as it turns out, not only cheated her, but also wanted to eliminate. For him, a loving wife was just an annoying obstacle on the way to wealth. This Angela is also good and is willing to be accomplices of crime to help her lover achieve a dishonest goal. A burning mixture of emotions pushed Helly to reckless action. But the woman with the remnants of prudence realized she could not allow herself to give in to her emotions. Her tantrum would mean victory for that nasty traitor Nathan and his filthy bedfellow, Angela. Allow her own defeat, Helly could not allow herself to be defeated. Wow, just 15 minutes ago I was perfectly happy. And now everything in my life has changed so drastically that I'm even dizzy. My husband has a mistress. And this is very Angela, or whatever Nathan called her. She personally hired her, always happy with her, as an employee, even provided career growth for her. When Angela complained that her health was failing in the kitchen and said she was going to look for a job in an office, she offered her a job as an accountant. Yes, you're not a good judge of character, the woman scolded herself mentally. She herself had recently heard with her own ears, so insidious and cold-bloodedly her husband discusses with his mistress a plan to eliminate his wife. He, so cunning and judicious, wants the law enforcement agencies to have no questions for him because of his wife's premature death. And Angela's giving advice. She's interested in ridding her lover of his legitimate wife. Well, okay, she wants to set things up so that she can maximize her winnings with little to no effort. Yeah, so much for his law degree. Although, as far as I know, Nathan's never handled a criminal case. But I can't say that I know him at all. How could I ever assume that in the company of his mistress, my husband would dare to eliminate me? Besides, who knows what kind of connections and acquaintances he has. It is quite possible that these nasty people will manage to build the whole case so that she, Helly, will go to the grave, and they will live happily ever after. Yeah, they're dangerous enemies. That's why we can't show these vile individuals that their plan has become known. Otherwise, they will act even more secretly or accelerate the realization of a despicable plan. It is necessary to keep calm to expose the traitors without the possibility of getting away with it. The lovers must suffer the punishment they deserve for the meanness they have so carefully planned, especially since the price of their success will be her life, her apartment, and marginally but still already a profitable business. The car is just a nice bonus. It's true what they say, appetite comes with the meal. Greedy Nathan does not think about divorce, because it means an inevitable division of property. However, he does not want to share neither the firm, which was actually founded by her alone. Of course, it cannot be denied they developed and led it to prosperity together. But he wants to take into his hands that has nothing to do with him. 3 years ago, when I married Nathan, I thought he loved me more than life. At least that's what he said. And today, by chance, I found out that's not the case. Nathan doesn't need me alive, and I'm even dangerous. But how wonderful and romantic everything started. The upset woman felt that tears were about to flow from her eyes, hastily parked the car in the parking lot in front of the nearest grocery store, and leaned back in her chair. Helly sank into her memories. Helly's mood had been far from romantic when she had met Nathan. She had been busy with the business of opening her own cooking shop, where she planned to prepare baked goods from homemade recipes. Of course, it was much more complicated than using some already promoted franchise. But it was the original bakery that she planned to organize together with her childhood friend Jane. Their kind and trusting relationship had developed in high school, and then although they had gone to different colleges, their friendship had remained virtually unchanged. It was surprising, but romantic, and often flying in the clouds. Helly did not irritate straightforward and pragmatic Jane, and her serious advice often helped to avoid trouble. The tandem of such dissimilar girls was perfect, and in the cafe their roles were distributed long before the opening. Jane, who had a profession as an accountant, was ready to take over all the money matters because she knew them, and even surprising her friend with love and attention, shared her delight at the successful conclusion of debit and credit. Helly educated as a pastry chef just on the profile of the conceived enterprise. By that time, it already had a few years to work in a quite decent institution and learn many valuable nuances, about which nothing said teachers in college. With the registration of the company and the initial capital, the girls were helped a lot by their parents, but they themselves also put out the maximum. But it was still difficult. Far from being stupid, Helly quickly realized that the experience was clearly not enough. It was much easier to be an employee than to manage everything on her own. But there was nowhere to retreat, and the girls strived for their goal. That momentous day turned everything upside down. Jane was sick, and Helly alone had to do the most unproductive thing in the world, waiting. Of course, the two of them would be much more fun, but as it was, she tried to fill the time with something useful, cleaning, thinking about the menu again, as if she hadn't done it in years. The downpour came suddenly, and the trusty umbrella let down, took and broke. Refusing to cope with its life-saving dome, Helly tried to hide under a tree stretching its crown, behind a paved walkway, to hail a cab, and nearly howled with annoyance. While the assembly of furniture was going on, the girl was so worried about the process that she forgot to put her smartphone on the charger. And here is the sad result: such a necessary now gadget nastily jammed and turned off, discharged to 0. Of course, exactly according to the law of meanness, at the most inopportune moment. Helly had to hurry to the bus stop, feeling the cold threads of rain that were not spring-like, causing a shiver, and then the water stopped raining down on her from above. It turned out that some stranger had sheltered her under his umbrella. Settling down beside her and pacing to the girl's rhythm, the man offered, "Girl, of course you are probably already soaked, but let me protect you nonetheless." Helly was a little confused, but did not turn down the help. After all, there were other hurrying park visitors around, and it wasn't scary at all. Besides, the stranger behaved quite adequately and did not offer anything reprehensible or indecent. Together they reached the public transportation stop. Many potential competitors were crowded under the awning. Shuttles were passing by, and the streetcar was so full of passengers that only a few of the most active lucky ones managed to squeeze into the carriages. The stranger introduced himself and explained, "My name is Nathan. You know, I was taught that once you help, you should never give up on a good cause. Given the traffic collapse, here's a suggestion. I'm calling a cab right now, and you and I will go home in comfort. If you're afraid, I can even order 2 cars. But that would be selfish to the people who would like to get home comfortably in this weather. I promise you'll be perfectly safe. Do you agree?" Feeling her soaked feet begin to freeze, Helly agreed, gave her address, and, thanking her for the courtesy, promised, "As soon as we're in the car, I'll wire you the money for the trip." The downpour came suddenly, and the trusty umbrella let down, took and broke. Refusing to cope with its life-saving dome, Helly tried to hide under a tree stretching its crown, behind a paved path, to hail a cab, and nearly howled with annoyance. While the assembly of furniture was going on, the girl was so worried about the process that she forgot to put her smartphone on the charger. And here is the sad result: such a necessary now gadget nastily jammed and turned off, discharged to 0. Of course, exactly according to the law of meanness, at the most inopportune moment. Helly had to hurry to the stop, feeling the shivering, cold threads of rain that were not spring at all. And then the water stopped crashing down on her from above. It turned out that some stranger had sheltered her under his umbrella. Settling down beside her and pacing to the girl's rhythm, the man offered, "Girl, of course you are probably already soaked, but let me protect you nonetheless." Helly was a little confused, but did not turn down the help. After all, there were other hurrying park visitors around, and it wasn't scary at all. Besides, the stranger behaved quite adequately and did not offer anything reprehensible or indecent. Together they reached the public transportation stop. Many potential competitors were crowded under the awning. Shuttles were passing by, and the streetcar was so full of passengers that only a few of the most active lucky ones managed to squeeze into the carriages. The stranger introduced himself and explained, "My name is Nathan. You know, I was taught that once you help, you should never give up on a good cause. Given the traffic collapse, here's a suggestion. I'm calling a cab right now, and you and I will go home in comfort. If you're afraid, I can even order 2 cars. But that would be selfish to the people who would like to get home comfortably in this weather. I promise you'll be perfectly safe. Do you agree?" Feeling her soaked feet begin to freeze, Helly agreed, gave her address, and, thanking her for the courtesy, promised, "As soon as we're in the car, I'll wire you the money for the trip." "Well, not right away. My smartphone ran out of battery, but you dictate your number to me, and then I'll throw you the amount due dot. The man monitoring the app for information about the arrival of the cab did not respond to this statement. Since there was not enough room under the roof of the bus stop for everyone, they stood there without saying a word, under the not-so-secure cover of an umbrella. But the rain slowly calmed down and no longer tried to roll the cold water out of the people's bags in the street with gusts of wind. Soon Nathan rejoiced and jokingly announced, pointing to a car neatly parked near the bus stop, "But here, the carriage is served dot." Helly was glad to be in the saving warmth of the automobile interior. When asked for her phone number, Nathan handed her a business card. "This is not for you to wire money. I can well afford a cab ride, especially since we're kind of on the way. Just in case maybe you or someone you know needs legal services? Call me. I'd be glad to. Getting out of the car outside her house, Helly again thanked the man who had unexpectedly come to her aid. "Thank you again." As soon as the thought of transferring money crossed her mind, Helly hurried to send Nathan the money. But soon a text message informed the girl that the entire amount had been returned. Also in the message was the text, "Nice to meet you. After thinking about it, Helly decided to send her savior from the rain an invitation to the cafe after it opened, saying that the kind man could try any treat at the expense of the place. This option seemed to be the most acceptable. Finally, the girl lit up and dozed off. About a week later, after kilometers of spent nerves, Helly and Jane's cafe received its first visitors. Not in vain, they were in a hurry. Not all the townspeople in the festive days of May went to the dachas and in the lap of nature, and there were quite a lot of visitors. Jane even had to help the employees. It was a good thing that she had applied for a health book at the same time as Helly and could not be afraid of possible inspections. By closing time, when their parents arrived to take care of their business, the girls were exhausted but satisfied. All together, closing the doors from visitors, sat at the tables for a while, letting Helly and Jane recover a little. It was only afterwards, having refreshed themselves with tea and unsold wares, that everyone went home. Helly didn't want to go to her parents' house for the night, so they gave her daughter a ride to the driveway. There, to the girl's surprise, Nathan was waiting for her. He had flowers in his hands, and it so happened that he, as if immediately, met potential relatives. The man held himself without embarrassment, but apologized to Helly's mom and dad. "Mary Alex, I apologize. I didn't think there would be an introduction to you today, and I didn't prepare you and your spouse the proper presents. I promise to correct the oversight the next time we meet," he said. The parents were rather wary of the active, though very courteous man, but they could not influence Helly. She was completely enchanted by the man. He quickly became the most necessary person for her. The girl was a little disturbed that the relationship between her lover and Jane was developing disgustingly. The girlfriend wrinkled her nose when Nathan gave her some compliments and didn't hesitate to snap at him if he dared to make critical remarks. "Look, Helly, I understand love is a carrot. Your head is spinning, but you don't notice what strange eyes this Nathan has. It's as if he's scanning his interlocutor for easy and visible weaknesses, so that he can strike a crushing blow if necessary. And those pupils dilate and constrict to the size of a mace, a black head. Look, you should be more careful with him. Don't be in a hurry to let him into your life," Jane cautioned. Helly tried her best to protect her lover. "Jane, you're not quite right. I mean, Nathan's eyes are really special, aren't they? Studious, but that's only because of his former profession. He used to be a police officer, and then as a lawyer he decided to retrain. Don't be offended if he criticizes you. He's just used to telling the truth," she explained. In love, Helly did not even notice that Nathan really often hurt her friend without any good reason. Joint walks stopped almost immediately. The man seemed to be polite, but managed to irritate Helly, causing an unpleasant feeling of jealousy because of the numerous and polite questions he asked her friend. He was interested in absolutely everything: where she studied, where and with whom she lives, what kind of accounting experience she has, and even in what store she prefers to buy clothes. In the end, tired of answering, Jane, who was not distinguished by humility and patience, burst out, "Nathan, what makes you think I'm in your office being interrogated? Look around. We're in the lobby of a movie theater with Helly. Give her your attention and leave me alone. I'm sick and tired of your questions. I'm tired of making excuses for something I didn't do." After that, the girl hastily said goodbye to her friend and went home without listening to her entreaties to stay. Since then, Jane tried to avoid communication with her unpleasant person in every possible way. Of course, it was impossible to completely exclude meetings, but she tried not to talk to him and even sometimes blatantly ignored the questions he asked her. By the fall, the cafe became a success. There were regular customers, including not too wealthy, but many students from the nearest university. Helly was overjoyed. Judging by the figures Jane showed her, there was already a net profit. It wasn't much, but it was already good. "We haven't recouped our investment yet," the accountant reported, "but if things continue at the same pace, I predict we'll be operating at a profit by early February. We'll have to think about putting something special in the range for New Year's Eve, won't we?" Helly knew she needed to spin even more so that the steady high income would allow her small team to proudly recognize the victory. Therefore, the quality must not be reduced in any way, and the assortment must be updated. Her friend's idea was a success, and soon the flow charts for painted holiday gingerbread were being developed. Simultaneously with the growth of profits, another joyful event took place. Nathan asked Helly to marry him, and she, without playing the popular girl's coquetry, immediately agreed. Jane, on hearing the news, hid her pretty face and distressed her friend by expressing her feelings on the subject. "I sympathize with you, Helly. That slippery Nathan is clearly not out of love for you insisting on getting married." Helly was incredibly offended then. "So you think I'm impossible to love? Is it because I'm fat?" "Well, know that Nathan is completely happy with my figure." Jane tried to justify herself. "It's not about your looks. You're fine with it. Although I've noticed you've been nibbling on oatmeal cookies instead of croissants in the mornings. With coffee, no sugar, no cream. I'd just advise you to watch how Nathan behaves when he thinks no one can see him. It's like he's doing calculations in his head all the time." Helly began to defend her lover, and eventually that conversation ended. An unsightly spat, and the friends almost stopped communicating, except for work matters. However, neither the quarrel with her best friend nor her mother's request to take a break and think did not affect Helly's decision. She perceived doubts in the groom as an insult to her personally. The girl was infatuated, married him. The only thing she went against her fiancé in was his desire for a prenuptial agreement. Somehow it seemed to the romantic Helly that this relegated the bright feeling of love to a pragmatic bargain. Nathan did not insist, but at his gentle request, the gift money was used to buy a family car. Helly was not embarrassed by the fact that she did not have a driver's license at that time, and in fact the car became the sole property of her husband. He occasionally drove her to work, but often their schedules didn't coincide. To get to work and back to her apartment, where she now lived with Nathan, she had long been accustomed to public transportation, and training at the driving school was constantly postponed because of the heavy workload. Business demanded constant attention. Competitors were not slumbering, opening nearby establishments of similar orientation. I had to constantly go half a step ahead, not only responding to demand. Gradually, after careful thought and calculations, came up with new products. Some ideas turned out to be unsuccessful, but in general, the development of the business pleased both the owners and those who received jobs and decent wages. In the process, there were a few not too pleasant cases when visitors tried to seek compensation for allegedly substandard products. But Nathan intervened in the proceedings and everything was settled out of court. For this intercession, she fell even more in love with the man. He seemed to her a real ideal. Unhappy customers were the exception. In general, visitors liked the institution, but the girls were not satisfied with the results achieved. In the assortment appeared sweets made for people who adhere to the right Piangela eye. Helly, though she did not immediately realize it herself, was embarrassed by her figure, which was like a vanilla raisin bun. She was annoyed by her own rounded knees, chubby arms, and the fat accumulations hiding her waist. Disregarding the advice of her mother, the young woman began to adhere to a strict diet. The mode of calorie deficit not immediately, but still went in favor of the figure. But from the former cheerful character is almost nothing left. Only trust in her husband was unchanged. Over time, Helly and Jane decided to expand their own network and open another cafe. Let it again lead to anxiety and turmoil, but there should be development. That's what the friends thought. Of course, Helly reported the idea to Nathan, with whom she always shared all the news. "Honey, we have the money to invest in expansion. We may have to take out a loan to speed up the process, but Jane is optimistic." Nathan responded to this with his own doubts. "You know, it seems to me that the cafe should have shown much better results. I don't want to upset you, but if you're interested in my opinion, I'll give it to you." "Of course, Nathan, I'm listening attentively," Helly encouraged her lover. and she heard something she didn't expect. Anyway, to be honest, no offense intended, you should double-check your Jape's bookkeeping. In my opinion, some of the money she just steals from under your nose, taking advantage of unlimited trust. Opening a new outlet is a whole new ball game. She'll collude with the team that will do the finishing work, and she'll make even more money on your naivety. Helly was outraged. What are you, Nathan? Jane is like a sister to me. We've been friends since high school, and I'm sure of her. The man continued to insist. I'm telling you, she's insanely jealous of you. That's why she's being mean, and I'm afraid that's just the flowers. She tried to charm me once to annoy you. I'm terribly sorry that in that situation I didn't think to turn on the tape recorder and record her calling you fat and suggesting that I start an affair with her. Helly didn't immediately believe her husband. It is not easy to undo a friendship that lasts more than 17 years. However, Nathan continued to convince his wife that in the form of Jane she had a snake in her heart. The second cafe was opened, but the renovations to the premises were entirely under Nathan's control. Jane often complained to Helly that the estimate seemed excessive, but her friend reassured her that Nathan knew what he was doing. The stubborn Jane pointed both her friend and her husband to the lines in the printed table. She openly said that some of the items were not very real at all. But she earned only a scornful comment from Nathan, of course. You can only see the numbers. You probably compared them with the cost of services of some foreigners who don't understand English and took the prices of goods from old advertisements, so you think you're someone else. What an expert in heels. Jane wanted to get into a verbal fight with her friend's husband, but Helly, trying to smooth over the emerging conflict, intervened in the dispute. Oh, I'd invite you over, but my wife's mother might show up at the apartment at the worst possible moment. Of course she would. She's got a daughter coming the day after tomorrow. She's thinking of all sorts of fatty goodies. She's a toad herself, so she raised her son and daughter the same way. You're not quite fair. Yours has been noticeably similar lately. A scrawny cow is not a reverent doe. Her skin is weathered, though she's trying to do some exercises, but her temper's gotten nasty. It's like you're not a woman, but a feast of body and soul. I myself want to enjoy your company in a comfortable environment. But for now, I have to hide. Helly held only on moral willpower. There was a great desire to appear in front of the lovers and express their indignation, not shy in expressions. However, Angela's next phrase literally made her gravitate to the floor. Helly should preferably be cremated. Then it would be possible to live without fear. After all, in this case, no one will not be able to find out the true cause of death. You're a dangerous little thing. Do you watch a lot of detective movies? I guess you're right. Cremation is the perfect way to hide the loose ends. I'll probably have to talk to her parents about burial arrangements. But I think I can convince them to go with what I suggest. It is unpleasant that they too will be heirs of the first turn, but it is also solvable. Again, from the loss of my beloved only daughter, there's not much that can happen. I believe you will think of everything in the best way. An enthusiastic Brew called out to Angela. There was the sound of kissing and instinctively staggered from the revulsion that seized her. Helly snagged a water bottle that had appeared on the floor, which must have been left by the builders. Oh, Nathan. Angela exclaimed, I think I heard a noise in the next room. Come on, it's nothing. The builders have long gone. Maybe the mouse, because of the sloppiness of unscrupulous exterminators, survived. Started to calm the mistress, Nathan. I think you just imagined it, but don't be nervous and don't get distracted. We have better things to do than chase mice, my kitty. Helly even covered her mouth with her hand to keep from screaming with resentment and disgust at the luscious intonation of her husband's voice. Angela continued to insist. Please go and see what's out there. I can't relax thinking that someone is around, or even peeking at us. Not waiting for her to persuade the man to check the room, Helly hurried away quietly so as not to give away in any way that she was here and heard such an unpleasant conversation. Wiping away her tears, Helly picked up her phone and looked online to verify her husband's words. It turned out to be just as he had said. Since they have not yet decided to have a child, then if something happens, and the first-line heirs will be her parents and the cunning, sneaky Nathan. The woman was horrified. So her mom and dad are also at risk. There was no doubt left it was necessary to strike a blow against the traitors. Can't risk her parents, worry them too. Can't go home and pretend to her husband that she missed him, that she was glad to see him, and that everything between them was still the same. Helly was not able to. Ironically, the only person to whom a woman treacherously betrayed by a supposedly loving husband and seemingly reliable employee could turn for help was Jane. But how would her once resentful friend treat the request to at least listen and give sound advice? Almost without breathing, Helly listened to the long beeps. Then, finally, an energetic greeting came from the speakers. "Hello. Ooh. Jane, please forgive me for everything. You were completely right. I'm in such a situation that I'm scared. Terribly scared. Please, let's meet. I can't tell you everything over the phone." Whether Jane had forgiven her friend or gloated, Helly didn't care. What mattered was that she heard the words that were so important to her. "All right, come on over. You probably haven't forgotten the address. It's just in time for my parents to go on vacation. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have let you in." Unlike her friend, Jane didn't want to live apart from her mom and dad. She thought with her rational mind that there was no point in getting involved in mortgage bondage, and it was better to save the necessary amount little by little, so as not to overpay. Soon Helly was already sitting in the cozy kitchen under the measured ticking of the ancient clock, which since the childhood of girlfriends were already in this very place. And having told about her problem, summarized this as such nonsense. "You can rightfully say that you warned me that you should not fully trust Nathan. I was wrong, and I'm surprised I didn't notice what kind of person he really is. I guess the whole staff knows about his affair with Angela, except for me." Jane shook her head as she listened to her friend without interrupting. "Even I didn't expect this from your husband, even though I've seen that he's a real scoundrel without principles or morals. I didn't think he'd be willing to do such a thing for profit. But I can't imagine how you're going to do it now. Most likely the time is very little, because they have already decided everything, judging by what you say. Sorry, I will say not the most pleasant things, but if they agree on cremation, then, most likely, as a way of your elimination will be chosen poisoning. Probably the best solution would be to move out of your own apartment for a while and strictly not accept any food or drink from their hands. However, there's a catch: your enemies may not plant the poison directly, but simply place it within easy reach. Going to the police is probably futile and maybe even more dangerous than dealing with it yourself. As I understand it, you did not make a record of the conversation between your husband and his mistress. And on top of all this, he may still have friends in the police. It's your word against his word. That's not a good bet. He's a lawyer, and things may not work out in your favor. I'm also worried that your parents are at risk. Even if you leave as if on a long business trip or on vacation, they can rearrange their plans and deal with Uncle Sasha and Aunt Masha, who, if you happen, what would be heirs first in line. I pity them, and you too, to be honest, got into this, his Nathan. Now we'll have to do our best to get out of it unscathed. So you can't run away directly, and right now. It's not safe to cause a scandal either. Who knows how a sweet couple of lovers will act then? We'll have to win by stealth, but we must think it over very well. The friends began to think of options, but the conversation was interrupted by the trill of a smartphone. It was Nathan calling. The wife decided not to talk to him for a long time, so that the man would not guess that she knew something, and quickly ended the conversation. "I'm terribly tired today. See you tomorrow." Making sure the call ended, Helly placed the smartphone on the table and fiddled with it, trying to hold back the tears bursting out. How can you lie so perfectly? If I didn't know he was dreaming of getting rid of me, I'd actually believe his words about the separation being unbearable for him. Lies so cynically, deceives, speaks tender words so unscrupulously, without even the slightest intonation revealing his true feelings and desire to destroy me. What sort of a man is he? Jane consoled the friend who had almost become an ex for good. You didn't listen to anyone's advice, but there's no time to regret the past. You have to do something in the present to avoid getting into an even worse situation. Helly was horrified by Jane's calm examination of the situation. All she could do was ask, "What am I supposed to do?" Jane continued to reason, saying everything in a measured manner, so as not to unnerve her friend. First of all, you shouldn't panic. It won't help and may even harm you. I'm afraid that with Angela's active assistance, Nathan has backed up and withdrawn a sizable sum into secret accounts, possibly opened with someone else's data. Of course, if they expect to eliminate you completely, maybe they did not make unnecessary movements. What's the use of making a fuss and risk being caught in an unfavorable coincidence, if after a short wait you can get a much bigger prize? That's a very funny joke, my love. But today, I dare remind you, is not April 1st. Well, I've got a lot to do. You can explain to me at home tonight what the hell went through your charming head. Kisses, my darling. Janine grinned a little too kindly. He's sure you're still madly in love with him. But from what I understand, at this very moment he's probably calling his mistress to see what's going on. The nasty couple will be here soon. Mark my word, they will most likely come one at a time. Janine was wrong. The friends had barely had time to sip a cup of coffee with the new menu when Nathan appeared in the office. The man's handsome face contorted with a grimace for a split second when he saw his wife in Jane's company. However, he instantly took control of his emotions and, saying hello, turned to his wife and then to her friend. I insist that you explain to me what happened on the business trip, except that this conversation is clearly not for the ears of outsiders. Jane, do you have the decency to leave me alone with my wife? She and I have a lot to discuss. Ellie asked. Nathan, we can't talk alone. If you want, let's discuss what you want to discuss. I'm listening to you very carefully. The man was puzzled, but decided to ignore the woman who always put him off balance and, raising his hands in the air as if in a sign of joking surrender, clarified. What's this unfortunate divorce joke? Helly spoke calmly, though she had to clench her fists to the point of whitening. No, Nathan, I'm not kidding at all. We're getting a divorce, and it's finalized. I don't want to say the reasons out loud. Besides, you know them very well. Tell me, what time can you come and get your things? Nathan was not going to give up without a fight, and Helly, overhearing his conversation with his mistress, understood why it was not enough for him to get what he would have gotten in a fair divorce. He wanted to take a bigger and tastier bite out of the family pie. This comparison, unintentionally brought to mind, helped the woman listen to her unfaithful husband, even with a modicum of humor. Helly, I don't understand anything. I can only guess that Jane is involved in this whole situation. Beloved, if you are interested in my opinion, such interference in purely family matters is out of the question. Suddenly the wife was even amused. Wow, my darling. And I thought you could call me a skinny cow to my face. The consternation seen in her husband's gaze gave the woman confidence, and she continued, You are gravely mistaken if you think Jane or anyone else but yourself is to blame for our divorce. I can't live with you anymore because you are a cheating, treacherous, and bilingual man. You have completely lost my trust, so let me know when you can come get your stuff. And let's finish this useless conversation with you. He realized that somehow his wife had become aware of what he called her behind her eyes, but he still tried to play it off, speaking in his deep, well-pitched voice. Beloved, in every family there are rifts, crises, and resentments. But for the sake of love, one must be able to negotiate, to compromise. Are we not living well? What do you lack? I give you enough time, I help you in business. Isn't that enough? If you want, let's just take a little break. Take yourself a trip, go to the gentle sea, have a rest, and when you come back, rested, satisfied, peaceful, then we'll continue the conversation. I love you and I'm not going to divorce you. While the woman, panting at her husband's insolence, thinking that now she would be touched by his confession, was looking for words to answer him, Angela entered the office, as her friend had predicted. She looked at the gathered company in surprise. Seeing her lover with his wife was familiar. However, her predecessor as accountant was also with them. Angela realized that something extraordinary was happening. She said hello and headed for her desk, but Helly turned to her, making it seem as if she had stumbled over words that had suddenly become a barrier. I hope you won't break the comedy and vacate your workplace of your own accord. It so happened that I became aware of your dishonesty, and I don't intend to tolerate such a person in the team and in my life. Angela glanced at her lover, hoping that he would come to the rescue, but Nathan was silent, and then she decided to defend herself. In general, I know my rights. I don't know what you were talking about, but I fulfill my duties in good faith, and such grounds as my perceived dishonesty are clearly not enough to dismiss me. If I have to, I will appeal to the labor inspectorate. I will send all the inspection organizations that can, and they will make such a fuss that all your cafes will be closed. You will go around the world with an outstretched hand. Understand? Helly looked with horror at the employee, whom she considered, if not a friend, then at least a decent person. How dare she threaten her, knowing what kind of business she was turning, taking advantage of her trust and the fact that the mistress was far from accounting. What self-control, what impudence. Noticing her friend's confusion, Jane entered into the unpleasant conversation, I'm not going to moralize. It seems useless. Actually, there are more than enough reasons to terminate the employment contract. So Angela, it's better not to threaten, but to choose a less painful option of parting with your job. If you think about it, you'll realize that Helly's offer is an act of mercy. Most businessmen in her place to such an accountant like you would arrange a fun life with litigation. And from the looks of it, Nathan would hardly rush to your aid. So you think what to do? The mistress sprang out of the study. Her lover's behavior clearly indicated that he was not going to support her. Nathan looked at Jane with hatred and then turned to Helly. Okay, I get it. You need to cool down a bit. I'll drive up to the house tonight around 8 p.m. and there in a quiet environment and hopefully without witnesses, we can talk. By the way, Jane, take care of your personal life. Don't meddle in ours. The man left the office, slamming the door. Soon Jane, asking her friend to hold on, went to her workplace, asking, "Shall I drive up to your place tonight? I don't think you should go out alone with that ghoul. There's no telling what he might come up with." Helly shook her head. Jane looked at the screen of her smartphone and hurriedly said goodbye. "You know, I missed our socializing too. I'll try to drive up without being late." I'm afraid Nathan won't want to pick up his stuff peacefully. So if you don't mind, I'll bring Michael. Remember him? She certainly remembered perfectly well the classmate who had always tried to woo her but failed all the time. Honestly, I didn't realize he was in town. I thought he was leaving. Anyway, of course, come. We'll have a little reunion, and my parents will be happy. Plus, it'll put everyone in a different mood. Michael always knows how to be inconspicuous and the indispensable center of any company. I still wonder why you keep him at a distance, to be honest. Janine answered the question and, satisfied that her thoughts were at least a little distracted from her troubles, hurried away. She was indeed almost late for work. Nathan prepared a real gentleman's set of reconciliation for the evening meeting with Helly, taking with him a huge bouquet of her favorite flowers, a bottle of champagne, a decent brand of baguette and caviar. The man had expected that the woman would not resist his charm and eloquence, as well as the delicacies, and he could hardly suppress a sigh of disappointment when the key did not fit the lock. This unexpected obstacle caused his mood to sour dramatically, but there was nothing to be done. He planned to reconcile with his wife and beg her forgiveness so he could eliminate her later. He had to stand in front of the door, calming down and shifting his anger. When the breath hitched from rage returned to normal, Nathan pressed the bell button. That Helly was not alone in the apartment was another unpleasant surprise. His wife's parents stood behind their daughter's back with eloquent glances, but he, as if not noticing the bags and boxes set out in the hallway, said hello, crossed the threshold and spoke. "Helly, my love, we should at least try to work things out peacefully. You've got a whole support group here." I was trying to be nice. Maybe there's no point in us breaking up. I love you. You love me. Why do we need a divorce? Well, things happen in life. We all fall short of perfection. We have to be able to correct the mistakes we've made and work on our family relationships. Do you want me to confess my love to you in front of my parents? I'm still crazy about you. And you're all business. So I made a mistake. It was a mistake. What man doesn't have an easy affair? I swear on anything. I swear I'll never look at another man again. What do you think? Helly was for the umpteenth time shocked at her husband's behavior so far. How calmly he spoke, indignant, with flowers, with a bag, so confident in his charm and the success of his visit, calling her his favorite. Lord, how could I get through this meeting without crying in front of this scoundrel? Helly grinned unhappily and replied, "Here's what I'm thinking, Nathan. How did I manage to marry such a lying monster? Only about 24 hours ago, you and your mistress were planning to kill me, and now you're trying to make a good impression, to make up. You even swear, quite sincerely as it may seem, that you'll be faithful. Good thing I didn't say 'till death do us part' in the context of what I heard last night. That wouldn't even be funny. Get your stuff and get out of my life. Just so you know, if you keep doing bad things, you'll be dealt with. I'm taking a chance on a peaceful resolution. The irritation that Nathan was trying so hard to hide came out. I understand that these bags, so kindly packed so as not to waste my time, contain only clothes. Actually, as my official husband, I'm entitled to some of the equipment as well. Did you really expect me to just take away just the clothes? But that's not even serious. You can't equate nobility with stupidity. I'll take everything I'm legally entitled to. So if you don't want to waste your nerves, we'll settle this amicably. Here's how it works. I'll take everything I'm entitled to and we'll have a quiet divorce. My father intervened in the conversation. Honey, you're the one with the law degree. Remind me what the punishment is for planning a crime, committing a crime by a group of people in a conspiracy. You still want the equipment. What would you need it for in prison, can you tell me? While his son-in-law was thinking how to respond, this is a more than serious accusation. Michael, whom he did not notice at first, almost under his elbow, but without using brute force, took the man out of the apartment of his almost ex-wife. The bags were also found on the stairwell. Separately, Helly took out a boxed set, presented at the wedding by her mother-in-law, then ran back into the room and took out a sturdy bag with a game console, which she had given to her once adored husband. Here. There are discs in the bag too, have fun. But don't even try to reconnect with me. It's over. I realize it's foolish to count on your decency, but please don't bother me anymore. Enough for the sake of all that between us was good, bright, joyful. Don't make any calls. Nathan answered nothing and, abruptly taking, almost snatching from Helly's hands the objects dear to him, turned around and went to the elevator. Yes, going to meet his wife, he had expected a very different result. During the day, when Helly said unflattering epithets for herself, he hoped that someone from the staff told the woman about the offensive words in her address. Now it was clear the wife found out about the insidious plan to eliminate her. Angela had been right to be worried about the strange noise. I should have gone yesterday to see what was going on. Maybe the situation would have turned out in his favor. Now the only thing left to do was to carry his bags and go to his mistress. The people left in the apartment were in a good mood. Mary, Nathan, and Alex, speaking one by one, suggested stay with us for a while, Helly, until everything calms down. And let's all come to our place now. We have our specialty dumplings. Just yesterday we made a freezer full of them. Michael smiled broadly, instantly remembering the hospitality of his former classmate's house, but he didn't answer, leaving Helly and Jane to decide. Helly and Jane nodded in agreement. Indeed, the woman, betrayed by her husband, now perceived her apartment as desecrated. She decided to renovate, at least cosmetically, and rearrange the furniture. She wanted to update the furnishings as much as possible, so that nothing reminded her of her not-too-long marriage. Having voiced her thoughts, the woman received the enthusiastic support of relatives and friends. Michael promised that in the near future he would call a reliable acquaintance who is engaged in repair and will be able to carry out the update without nervousness.